So tonight I wanted to make an impromptu video because a very interesting case has come up in the stride of my research into the Montandon watch history and the earlier watchmakers. Now, until recently, I hadn't understood that there was an individual who moved to Germany and apparently was making watches. Now, this individual, he is David-Frédéric Montandon, Varoda. He is of the Varoda genealogical branch. And now, what interestingly, now David Frédéric's father, this would have been Daniel Henry Montandon, was a very high up individual in Brévine. And it is very possible that through the father's position, monies would have been available for such a business venture. However, we do find that David-Frédéric Montandon did move to Crefeld, Germany. Now, this was, at the time, this was in Prussia. However, this is very close to the Dutch border and very close to, it's north of Dusseldorf in present-day Germany. So this must have been around no later than 1784. We find that by 1785, David-Frédéric has already married, and he's married a local lady, and this would have been a Bruckmann. So this Sibyl Bruckmann. Now, we know that he was married in 1785, and her full name is Petronella Sibyl Bruckmann. Now, it's very interesting because this individual, David-Frédéric, we find him listed in a 1787 almanac, essentially, a business journal, and 1789. Now, these are German sources, and these sources are so-called Allgemeiner Kontorist. And here he is noted as a manufacturer and seller of fine watches. And likewise, we also find him appearing in a 1794 Italian source. This is noting him as, and the source is Il Mentore Perfetto de Negozianti. And it mentions Montandon Davide Federico, whereas in the German sources he's referred to as David Friedrich. And of course in the Swiss genealogical resources, he's in the French as David Frédéric. However, he is listed as making as a fabbrica e negozia in Oriole Piccoli, and this are probably orologia, which is meant here. So we do find his record as having sold watches, and it's very interesting because this does change later after 1800. We're not exactly clear exactly when he stopped selling watches, but there is a very interesting anecdote to this individual and his watch sales. Now, he was located in this small town of Crefeld, and during the French Revolutionary Wars in 1792, and I believe this was either probably the first campaign with the Allies against the French army invaded this area. They were fighting the Austrians, and there were a series of battles that took place in this area. And in 1792, a French force was in the area, and they conducted a reconnoitering or recon group, entered Crefeld. And this group consisted of, let's see here, our source mentions a sergeant with 7 red hussars. These are cavalry troops. Now, this was a small detachment that was scouting the area. However, while in Crefeld, they went into David-Frédéric's shop, and the men purchased 2 silver watches at the requested price. However, we are told that the sergeant took a gold watch and then basically explained that the bill would be sorted out by the magistrates, and this caused somewhat of a local uproar. However, it's very interesting to find these French troops in the shop of this Montandon, who would have spoke French and been dealing with them in French, and that this unfolded in such a way. So we do know that he was still selling watches in 1794 after this event, and it's not exactly clear at what time he stopped the watch selling, but we do find him already as late as 1817, and at this point he's already switched, or we see him at least mentioned for work as a tanner or selling these types of tanning, these hide products. Now, during this period of the 18th century, it's very frequent to have multiple sides of a business. In other words, revenue flows were financed by the sale of various textiles and whatnot, and this was all part of the of a financial cycle that was in use at the time. That one was one good was turned into cash, and then purchased. Other goods were purchased with this money, and then it was turned around, and there was this cycle with this. So this is quite common. And now, so David-Frédéric, we have him, genealogical sources. He would have been born in 1758 in Brévine in Switzerland. Not exactly clear at what time he did leave for Prussia. However, this would have probably been in the early to mid 1780s, and it's not actually also clear whether his father actually may have been a part of this. This is not exactly clear. However, his son Heinrich Friedrich, now he was an accountant, and he became involved in these textile areas as well. He worked with a very rich man who, at the time of his death, willed him a very large amount of money, something like 6,000, I believe it was, of the local currency. And I can put this up when I find it. The denomination escapes me. Now these, he actually knew intimately all the secret accounts of this individual, and he was a very dear friend, and this is one of the reasons why he was remembered in the will. He was actually handling the affairs after his death, and he made sure that everything was squared away, but also he may have positioned his himself and his son. This is Heinrich Friedrich, the son of David-Frédéric. He would eventually totally take over the silk factory. And this, we're talking of Friedrich August. And Friedrich August, now he did have partners at various times, but basically he became very well known for the silk factory in Crefeld. And it later went to his son, Heinrich Friedrich, and so on. But we see this all the way up into the 1920s. In fact, in 1892, we see this H. Montandon and Co., the silk factory in Crefeld, mentioned in IRS documents. And this continued. We can find this in Kelly's, in this International Almanac with addresses and whatnot, into the 1920s. So this textile side of this business did last for approximately 4 generations. It's not exactly clear at what point the watches were abandoned. It may have been under David-Frédéric that because of the economic situation in continental Europe under Napoleon's rule, these areas were subjected to a really heavy taxation. There was a blockade going on, and it just may have been that at some point or another the watches became unfeasible to maintain this business. But this is a very interesting interlude, and this tells us a very unique story of this individual who moved out of Switzerland to Germany, to Prussia. Now, we only know of 2 individuals who did this. One was Jean-Jacques Henry. He was a an engraver who was in Potsdam area and seems to have been attached to a factory that was being overseen by the king of Prussia's watchmaker, the Huguenon brothers, who's made also the inspector of the watchmaking in the country. But and he was only an engraver and part of a factory that was working in that area, right under in the Berlin area. But this is as far as fabricants d'horlogerie and négociants. David-Frédéric appears to be the main Montandon fabricator only in Germany, functioning in this area. So that makes him rather interesting in the fact that he also left as early as he did. Now, he was from La Brévine, and there were many other very close relatives. These were mainly Blaisleons. He is of Verona. Now, this is somewhat closely related, nevertheless. They all trace their genealogy back to the same original common ancestor. However, around this time we see Balthasar Montandon, 1780s, most likely after the mid-1780s, perhaps by 1790, but we see Balthasar moving all the way to France, over to Clermont and Lyon area. So we are starting to see movements of these watchmaker individuals. Now, David-Frédéric, it should be mentioned, there's a list of documented cases where watchmakers have received or participated in various trainings for watchmaking to become a specialist, or themselves taught, and etc. We do not see these records in the Swiss records at all, so it's not exactly clear when David-Frédéric learned his arts, and for whom indeed, or where. Most likely it would have been done before going to Germany. Germany would have been a very hard sell as far as having moved there and then not having the knowledge. That one would have needed the knowledge, and certainly there were family connections at play here, that the father was quite well placed. And this, the specific family group that they belong to now, Verona, there is a more specific category, and this is these members are belonging to the so-called Rameau de Vieux Daniel, the Book of Old Daniel, and so their ancestor was Daniel Montandon, and now the sub-branch that they belong to is Montandon Notaire, and these are many notaries. And now Daniel Henry was also a notary. This is the father of David-Frédéric. Now, before him, this Daniel, we find him with the knowing the arts of surveying, notary as well. So all of these first ones, including the son Heinrich Friedrich, also had this notarial background. And there are so many of them in this direct line that they're called Montandon notaries, sort of as a subgroup. But it is very interesting, and this is just a small note for the record to document this interesting case and this incident with this early watchmaker who we find in Germany in the 1780s, and this encounter with French invasion troops, which were conducting a raid or reconnaissance in the area, and we have the descriptive information that they took these, they bought 2 silver watches, and the sergeant commandeered a gold watch. So I hope this was an interesting tale, and I thank you for your attention, and I will see you. Bye-bye.